All right.
All right.
It is what it is.
No.
It is what it is. I'll tell you what it is. It is time for Unapologetic with Chet and Duffy. I am your host, Chet, and of course, to my right, as usual, is my great and wonderful counterpart, Duffy. Duffy, how are we doing today, my man?
Chad, I'm doing pretty solid. Myself today, you know what the vibe is. Typical Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Per usual, we're back. And, a lot of headlines to look forward to this week. Get into some few things, some nice developments this week in the sports world. I'm excited to talk about them with you this week, Chet.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited too, Duffy. We're basically going to be covering a lot of NFL talk this period and, of course, some NBA because the All-Star break is quickly approaching. So we'll jump right into it. And we're going to start off with a huge deal that happened last week, actually, right after we had concluded the show. I think it was Thursday night, but Carson Wentz. Yeah, it was Thursday night.
Of course, it was the day after.
Of course, dude. Honestly, dude.
Wow.
But a huge development with the Indianapolis Colts. Carson Wentz officially traded from Philadelphia over to Indianapolis. He will now be the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Honestly, I was a little taken back by this trade, but it was a trade that needed to be done for the Colts in order to be successful down the road. So, Duffy, why don't you weigh in here a little bit?
Yeah, I think this is a good move by the Colts. And the first thing that comes to mind really is that Carson Wentz is now going to team up with Frank Reich again, who he found the most success with back in 2017 with the Eagles. We're forgetting as football fans that, around 1,100 days ago, we're looking at Carson Wentz as the unanimous MVP almost of the 2017 season, and he tears the ACL week 14 and he never looks the same again, which is crazy in retrospect. But teaming up with Frank Reich again on this Colts team, they're playing indoors. It's much better for Carson Wentz if he wants to be successful too. Obviously, great defense, great offensive line. This is one of the most complete teams in football. This was, arguably the number one, spot for any team, for any quarterback wanting to go to a new team, really. This team is so complete. They're all around offense, defense, receivers are pretty good. Michael Pittman Jr. is a great young receiver too, great running backs. I'm looking forward to see what Carson Wentz can do in Indianapolis. I think the Colts got him for a really cheap steal of a deal. And I think we're going to see a career resurgence from him. I think we're going to see a renaissance from him. I think we're going to see the closest to what he's been since his MVP caliber season 3 years ago. And I'm really excited, to see what they can do. I think these guys can be legit contenders in the AFC.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to build on that point, the Colts, it was definitely kind of a big shock to me in the offseason that we heard Phillip Rivers was retiring after a very solid season with the Indianapolis Colts. So once again, the Colts were QB shopping after just having Andrew Luck retire a year ago. And then they stick with Jacoby Brissett. And then after that, they seemed a little unsatisfied. Phillip Rivers was available, so they picked him up in the open market. He retires, and now we got Carson Wentz. And we look at Carson Wentz's stat line. Last season, not really looking too hot. Only 2,600 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. It's terrible. It's terrible with a QB rating of 72.8. So he is below the average ranking of an average quarterback in the league.
And all those interceptions, he had a lot more interceptable passes than any quarterback in the league too. Let's not forget 15 picks and I think 11 starts it was, or 12 starts. That is terrible. And it could have been 20 almost if some of those DBs catch those passes.
Yeah, it just seemed like for the most part, Carson Wentz just was not fitting in with the system of the Philadelphia Eagles. The offense almost changed, it felt like, as the seasons progressed. You get new people, new faces. You have injuries like Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz always popping up. Running backs were never stable. They always, until they finally got Miles Sanders. But to be honest, it could have just been a system flaw with him. But for me, it's tough to say if Carson Wentz is going to be elevated by this move to the Indianapolis Colts. But like you said, he's getting into a system where you have Naheem Hines, Jonathan Taylor, T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman Jr. T.Y. Hilton could be potentially on the move this offseason, so that's something to look out for. But you're talking about a very stable O-line. He had a solid O-line in Philly, yet, somewhat. But this is definitely
stable for sure. Brandon Brooks.
Yeah. But this is definitely the most stable and most dominant O-line in the National Football League. Also, catered by that defense, that stud of a defense that the Indianapolis Colts had this past season, it could be a potential playoff push for them. And I definitely think I could see the Colts in the playoffs if this trade pays off.
Yeah, I mean the Colts coming off of a big playoff season last year, anyways, and they were a team that went 11-5, 7 seed, and I think they can go around the same record as next year too with Carson Wentz. I don't know if that they win more games because 11-5 is a really solid record, especially in that really contested AFC. I think they're the favorites to win the AFC South next year for sure. I think that towards the end of the season where they, were looking pretty good. They were picking things up. Almost beat Buffalo in Buffalo, which is a game that people forget about how close that actually was.
Yeah.
Was playing quarterback. But like you were saying, Chet, the disparity of talent between this Colts offense and what the Eagles are working on offense the last couple of years is very wide. It's a big gap. And before the season, a lot of people were saying that Carson Wentz was only struggling because he had no receivers. There were a lot of injuries, that he wasn't the problem. A lot of Carson Wentz apologists out there that just love him, but it's partially true. There's not as much talent on those Eagles teams the last couple of years as there is on this Colts team. But Carson Wentz is going to have to step it up regardless. He's going to have to throw less picks, make better decisions with the football. Because before this year, he threw 15 picks here. Before this year, he threw 21 picks in the 3 seasons combined in the 3 years before. 7 picks a season. He's going to have to get back to that level, minimize mistakes. I think with this Colts team that saw Phillip Rivers, a guy who came in the system last year, after a 20-plus interception season to get down to 10 picks and make the playoffs 11-5, I think Carson Wentz is going to see some similar success. I think he'll have a bounce-back year. I think he might be an early comeback player of the year candidate, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely
bold, but it could happen.
Yeah, no, I honestly, in my opinion, I don't find that I don't think that's very bold of you to say. I mean, honestly, it's bold. Well, I'll give you that, but I know what you're saying.
Because a lot of these guys get it after being injured.
Yeah.
Not many guys get it after playing bad. I mean, Phillip Rivers actually got it, speaking of the devil, back in, I think, 2013 after he had a bad year. But
yeah,
he was ridden out of Philadelphia by the media, the fans, the organization. Didn't talk to Doug Pearson for the last 2.5 months of the season. He's had so many things working against him. If he goes in Indianapolis next year and throws 30 touchdowns, goes 11-5, 12-4, that he has a really good case for the award.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm probably going to have to agree with you on this one. I mean, I really think Carson Wentz may see a rebirth and, like you said, a renaissance for himself on the Indianapolis Colts because, I mean, they've just got what it takes to make a playoff push. They've got the weapons, they've got the defense to back it up, and they got the O-line to protect him. Oh, yeah. He's basically set up in the best situation a quarterback could really ask for going into a new team. And for me, I think if I were to predict it right now, I think we will see the Colts once again in the playoffs, and I think we will see them around a similar record. Did they finish at 11-5 this year?
11-5, correct. Yep.
I think we're going to see an extra win in the column for them. I think Carson Wentz is going to actually do extremely well on this team and throw for about 30 touchdowns, and I'd say 10 interceptions just to count it off, and about 4. And I think he'll breach
good ratio.
I think he'll breach over 3,500, potentially 4,000 passing yards next season. I think we will see the Colts have a potential to make a playoff push. Seeding wise, I think we'll see them as this is tough because you got teams like the Tennessee Titans in that division that can really bring the hurt. And then, of course, if the Jacksonville Jaguars draft Trevor Lawrence, which more than likely they will, they'll give them a little run for their money. The Houston Texans are almost in disarray at this point with losing J.J. Watt and Deshaun Watson potentially, which we'll get to. But I'm going to give this team the benefit of the doubt, and I'll give them the AFC South title, and they're going to finish in first place at I'm going to give them the 3 seed on this one.
I like that. I would say about the 3 seed, 3 or 4 seed.
Mm-hmm.
But it all comes down to also if Carson can just play good football,
Yep. Obviously, this is all speculation very early on.
Football.
We just don't know where he'll end up. But speaking of Deshaun Watson definitely, he has some very big pending trade offers. And based on rumors, what we've seen so far, the top 3 teams that are really looking at this guy, which we mentioned last week, are the Miami Dolphins, the Carolina Panthers, and the New York Jets. These teams all would suit him very fine in that system, in those systems. And I mean, I already called the New York Jets, but I mean, we'll see what happens because I mean, the Carolina Panthers, they've had some issues with Teddy Bridgewater. He's had injury problems that have definitely lingered going into this offseason, and they're willing to part ways if they can ink a deal. And then Miami, they're kind of a little, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's an old-time vet, but I can't guarantee he'll be playing seasons to come. And Tua Tagovailoa in his first debut of the season, I mean, definitely underperformed from what people expected, and people were a little disappointed with his performance. So it's up to them if they want to deal him or just find a way to get him off their team somehow and get Deshaun Watson on there.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Panthers a lot making a move to get Deshaun Watson. They've eaten up a whole lot of dead money, cap space, over $30 million to date so far, which is crazy. They're really showing that they're going to be aggressive in this pursuit to get Deshaun Watson. They have a lot of draft capital in store. It makes sense for the Panthers, I think, to trade away one of those picks instead of a team like Miami, who Miami actually got their early pick from Houston, so I can't really envision them giving it right back to them.
Yeah,
but Carolina's a top 5 pick in the draft too. We saw a lot of inconsistency with Teddy Bridgewater this season. A guy that they're looking to move on from, reportedly, after signing a $63 million deal last offseason. He had a tough stretch on the end of the year. He started 3-2, and the team ends 5-11. I think I think they finished 4-12 actually. And the other game they won was with PJ Walker, if you remember when they played the Lions.
I do. I do remember PJ Walker.
They finished 5-11. Teddy beat his last win. He beat Washington in Week 16. That is right. He beat Washington in Week 16. Good Washington team. I'm a big fan of those football guys, but I do like Deshaun Watson going to this team. The Panthers, they have a lot more upside on the offensive side of the ball than other teams. Guys like Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, who each surpassed 1,000 yards last year. Christian McCaffrey going to come back healthy next year too. That Deshaun McCaffrey combo would be absolutely terrorizing the teams. That would be crazy. I think they'd be not the favorite for the NFC South because obviously you got the Buccaneers still in there. I think they'd make the playoffs, but I like the Panthers, making it clear that they want to make a run for Deshaun Watson. And I think it will happen before the draft. If they make a move, like I was saying last week, whoever gets Deshaun Watson is going to make a move for him before the draft, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that you can't wait. You have to go and get him. This is a guy who's clearly unhappy, clearly needs no other motive to stay with this team. All lines point him to leaving at this point. I mean, and for me, seeing him go to the Carolina Panthers, and based on what you have said to me, I mean, I'm sold on the whole idea for him going there. I think it's a perfect fit. Do I think they'll make the playoffs? Potentially, because you're looking at a tough NFC South with, of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and then the New Orleans Saints being the top dogs in that division. So, I mean, it could, if they improve on defense a little bit come this draft or even this offseason to complement Deshaun Watson, I think it could work out and they could make a potential playoff push. I don't think they'll win the division by any means, but I think they'll probably at least they'll probably be in second or third and just sneak in. But the thing is this would be interesting because now you're talking about going back to the grassroots of what the Carolina Panthers were all about before Teddy Bridgewater, because they had Cam Newton. Now you're talking about a guy who's multidimensional, a mobile quarterback who can throw the ball when he can or take off when he needs to. This is a guy who can pass for 4,000 yards and still rush for at least 500
almost 5,000 yards too.
Yeah.
With mediocre talent. This is an improved receiving core he'd be getting in Carolina than what he had last year, because now you got two guys on the outside, and Moore and Anderson, and a guy on the backfield, McCaffrey, who's going to come back full strength. He's in for a huge season. Another really big contender for comeback player of the year, Christian McCaffrey, who we only saw him play like 4 or 5 games last year after missing most of the season. I mean, it sucked because I picked him in 2 of my 4 leagues too. I had a top 3 pick. I had top 2 pick in 3 out of my 4 leagues. And I picked McCaffrey in 2, and I picked Saquon in the other. Just didn't work out.
Another rumor I saw circulating is the San Francisco 49ers actually taking a potential look at Deshaun
Wow.
Watson, which could also be a huge deal for that team because you're talking about weapons like Deebo Samuel, no more Emmanuel Sanders, but you have George Kittle, you have Kendrick Bourne, and then you have Raheem Mostert to complement you in the backfield. And that defense, when it's healthy, is definitely going to be one of the best defenses in the league when you have people like Nick Bosa and Richard Sherman screaming in on defense, making some big plays on the ball. So, I mean, that could be a potential fit for him too. Is it realistic? I'm not sure. I mean, it would be a decent fit, but right now, I'd say the top of my list right now is probably the Carolina Panthers, followed by the New York Jets. Those are the teams that have a lot to give up that could really elevate because of his talent.
Yeah, imagine Deshaun Watson, that Kyle Shanahan offense too. I mean, that would be really formidable to other NFC teams. Because we've seen these Kyle Shanahan offenses being extremely run heavy with guys like Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman back on that 2016 Falcons team. Great pass team too. I'm not going to discredit Matt Ryan, but this Jimmy Garoppolo team that made the Super Bowl 2 years ago, run first team. We saw Raheem Mostert run for 4 touchdowns in the NFC Championship game. We saw Jimmy Garoppolo throw less than 30 passes in his first 2 playoff games. If Deshaun Watson goes to this 49ers team, they are a shoo-in, not even for the playoffs here. I think they're shooting for the NFC West next year.
Potentially.
I think they win the division hands down. I think they're better than the Rams I think the Rams are their closest competitor, without a doubt, because they're a really all-around great team too. But
you've jumped ship on the Seattle Seahawks?
Dude, the culture in Seattle is taking a downward trajectory. These guys, I think in short notice, by the mid-20s, these guys are going to be bums. If
Yeah.
Russell is still on the team, I don't think they will be, but with the way things are looking at with Russell Wilson, I think that the end in Seattle could be closer than what we thought. I've been watching football. The first time I watched football was Russell Wilson's rookie year, which makes me feel really, really old. And, I was thinking about when I first saw him his first few years in Seattle, I'm like, this guy's going to be a Seahawk for life. He's going to be like Tom Brady on the Patriots, Brett Favre Packer type thing. He's gonna spend almost at least a decade and a half on this team. But I've seen a lot of things that he said recently about the organization. He wants more moves and personnel decisions,
especially on that offensive line.
Yeah, especially the offensive line. And with the way the Seahawks ended the season last year, if we don't see a big, if we don't see a championship or at least an NFC championship appearance in the next couple of years in Seattle, I think we might be saying goodbye to Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I think so too. It's definitely become apparent that he is definitely unhappy with his situation there because we saw in that Rams game players like Aaron Donald were just screaming through that offensive line and they were in complete disarray. You lose Mike Iupati a few days ago. He finally retired after 11 seasons in the league. Very great offensive guard.
A long career,
but at the same
3 out of 4 teams in that division too, which is something I looked at. I saw his Wikipedia afterwards.
Yeah. And you have a tackle like Dwayne Brown, who's in his 30s, but he's almost on his way out at this point. This team really needs to find itself some type of personnel to protect their quarterback because I don't see Russell Wilson really staying that long in this team. And I do agree. I think the Seahawks will take a dip in the standings and we'll probably see San Francisco, Arizona too. You can't forget about the Cardinals on the come up.
I'm not big on the Cardinals. I think they're jokers, dude. I think they're.
We'll see. They could make some off-season moves.
I think they're Kenyon Josh to me, dude.
I don't think so. No? I think give it another year.
They got to get rid of Kingsbury first.
Probably, yeah. That guy's a joke.
I've quoted this tweet so many times that Cliff Kingsbury, after they lost the Week 17 game to the Rams, and they scored 7 points. Am I doing this right? Yeah, 7 points, dude. Cliff Kingsbury is just Adam Gase with a $200 haircut. So
that's a good way of putting it.
He sucks. He's not good.
Yeah.
Scored 19 points in your last 2 games trying to make a playoff run. Nah.
Yeah. Only time will tell, but of course, both these players definitely, one's happy with the destination he went to. We'll see what happens with Deshaun Watson in the coming weeks, and that's a story we'll definitely cover for quite a while until the deal is done, or if anything happens, or if the story gets cold, we'll see. But coming up next, we're going to start talking about Patriots because the Patriots are in desperate need of a quarterback. Definitely some quarterbacks potentially about to float into their marketplace right about now. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after these messages. All right, sports fans, welcome back to Unapologetic with Chet and Duffy here on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. We're going to hop right into some Patriots talk. So the biggest need at the top of the list for the Patriots right now shouldn't be wide receiver. It shouldn't be tight end. It should be quarterback. Quarterback is a must right now.
Those are certainly 2 and 3 for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So looking at the options in the market, obviously the first one that comes to mind is the obvious one. He was the leader of the team this season. That is none other than Cam Newton. Cam Newton definitely not showing off the best of his abilities last season, definitely struggled a lot. And it seemed like the run game was the only thing that really worked with him. The passing game was almost in disarray for most. It was a joke. The bottom line, just complete joke, and it's just not something we expect out of the New England Patriots. So, I mean, Tim, let's hear it. Weigh in on this one.
You know, there's a lot of different ways the Patriots can go here. I honestly think they do re-sign Cam Newton, maybe another 1-year deal or something. But I do think they're going to bring in some legitimate competition at the position in the offseason, because you can't go into 2021 definitively having Cam as your starting quarterback. He didn't prove it enough last year for him to have no other competition. I've seen names like Marcus Mariota come into play. He's a guy that Pats can sign to, give Cam some competition, both similar talents, dual threat quarterbacks. I've also seen trade rumors around Jimmy Garoppolo's name and another reuniting with New England. I don't really see that happening too much, because they're going to have to give up a lot to get Jimmy G. That's a lot of cap room to add that huge contract signed in 2017. But I honestly think we're going to re-sign Cam Newton. Will he be the starter? I think it's up in the air. I think it's possible, but I think we're going to have to, have a little quarterback controversy in camp for the first time in about 2 decades in Foxborough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I was talking with somebody about this last night about potential draft position for the Patriots. I mean, they're ranked lower in the league, obviously, probably in the middle of the pack in terms of draft picks. But I mean, just looking at the way it goes and the way Bill Belichick runs as the GM really for this team, I just don't know if they'd even consider trading up to get a QB if that's their move, really. I think Cam Newton's probably the option they'll probably end up going with. I mean, we don't know yet. There's still no talk about it, really. I mean, they've kind of just been up in the air with the whole decision. It's just tough for me to see them ever getting players like Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, or Trey Lance.
They should have tanked this year, because this is one of the deepest quarterback draft classes we've seen. We have 4 guys
in a long time.
We have 4, maybe 5 guys going in the first round, and the Patriots
absolutely.
The Pats could legitimately get one of them, because not all of them are going to go in the top 15. They have the 15th, 16th pick, something like that.
Yeah.
I think the Pats, there's no way the Pats are going to trade this pick either. I don't think. We've seen Belichick trade picks in the past, especially on night 1 of the draft. But when your team is looking this, sloppy on offense, sloppy on really both sides of the ball towards the end of the season, you got to go for one of these high recruited names this draft. And many quarterbacks, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, like you were saying, Trey Lance too. Those are 5 guys who are probably going to go in the first round.
Yeah.
the Pats, I think they could draft one of them. I don't know where each of the guys are going to go. Probably three of those guys are going to go in the top 10. Wilson, Lawrence, and Fields. Lance, I've seen him, slipping more in mock drafts. I've seen Fields slipping down to the Patriots in a mock draft too at 15, which I don't think is going to happen. I think that was really generous of whoever wrote that. But
who said he'd fall? Wait, which quarterback would fall?
Justin Fields from Ohio State. It was some dude from NFL.com.
I don't know about that.
It was Lance something. He had like a really distinct last name. Lance Zerline. That's who it was. I know Lance Zerline. He said that he had the Fields on the Pats at 15.
Yeah,
but I can see him picking up Mac Jones, maybe Trey Lance if he falls there.
Yeah. Based on CBS NFL's rankings right now, they have Mac Jones falling to 23, and the Patriots would be in a position to get him. But right now, projected Patrick Surtain, the second out of Alabama.
From Alabama. We don't need a corner, man. We have
exactly. No, I know. I'm just naming where they basically would be if they were to pick. And then Gregory Rousseau out of Miami as an edge rusher, which obviously those are needs we do not need.
Wait, is this a mock draft or is this like a prospect ranking?
It's just a prospect ranking. So that's basically Mac Jones would be in the vicinity for the Patriots, but the other top three, like Trevor Lawrence, let's see here, Zach Wilson, and then Justin Fields, those would be the top six picks right there.
I'm gonna be in the top six right now. I'm looking at my mock draft right now. Give me one, give me one sports media outlet you want me to get it from. We'll analyze who got the Pats going. What do you think? Like Sports Illustrated, CBS, NFL.com. What are you thinking, bro?
Go with NFL.com.
All right, 2021 NFL mock draft. Let's look at Daniel Jeremiah, the man himself. This is from Feb. I want to get the newest one, 4.0. Whatever. I'll get this one. Daniel Jeremiah's 2021 NFL mock draft has the Patriots picking J.C. Horn, cornerback from South Carolina. I don't get this.
I don't know what the thinking is there. If they possibly think
his contract end after 2021. I don't know if the Pats are going to re-sign him because he will be, looking for a lot of money. But holy shoot, dude, that was. Did you hear that?
Yeah, was that a commercial? I hope so.
NFL.com was speaking to me some stupid commercial, but when you look at the Patriots in this draft, they got to go offense because we're talking about the other big needs: receiver, tight end. This was the least intimidating offense in the entire National Football League last year. You couldn't count them to score 20 points in a game.
Yeah, you were talking. Yeah, because you were talking about a quarterback who would have more rushing yards than he would passing, and his passing yards would usually be under 100, guaranteed.
Yeah, 4 or 5 games with under 100 passing yards, which is crazy.
Yeah, because, looking at Cam Newton's stat line, really, just this season, he passed for 2,600 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and then on the ground game, 592 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns. Obviously, his ratio is more leaning towards the run game, but that's the thing. I think the Patriots struggled this season with him to figure out what works because, they did try to manipulate the offense in a way to make it more so catered to Cam Newton. But at the same time, there were still things that we were expecting out of that Tom Brady brought to the table. But it's just tough to see. And looking at their other options, Marcus Mariota, I'm all set there. That's a guy who
I'm all set with him, bro. He's not good.
He came into the league top 5 draft pick, did all right with the Tennessee Titans for a few seasons, but just never really productive. And the Raiders, they can't even get trade value out of him, so they're probably going to release him. So if anything, I wouldn't want the Patriots picking him up. And as for Jimmy Garoppolo, it's tough for me to say if I want him back because obviously injuries have caused him to be not what we expected, and especially against the Jets when the San Francisco 49ers played them, or it might have been a different team. I remember he was in there for a little while, and then they had to take him out because his foot was bothering him or ankle. So, if the Patriots want to risk it with an injury-prone quarterback that hasn't really played a full season.
He's going to eat up a ton of cap. Yeah. Good. No thanks.
It's tough to really say if I want to go with Cam Newton. I would much rather prefer they go for somebody in the draft. But I don't know. Bill, I feel like Bill has a plan, but I don't know. It's very bleak.
It is very bleak. I'm just looking forward to see who they take because if they're staying at 15 in the draft and you still got 2 or 3 of those highly touted QBs on the board, everyone's going to expect the Pats to go in that direction.
Yeah,
because if free agency starts, I think in like 2 weeks, they can surely sign a free agent quarterback. We're going to be seeing how the Pats handle Cam Newton in the next coming weeks. There's a lot of things they have to develop in these next 6 weeks before the draft, before we can really determine what the Pats are going to be able to do. But at the moment, right now, I think picking a quarterback would be the best decision. But we're going to have to see if they want to re-sign Cam in free agency in the next couple of weeks. I think they will, honestly, due to a 1-year deal. I think they would get it done before the draft because, we saw Cam play for relatively cheap last year. I think like $800,000 or maybe even less than that. But he's the type of guy he won't care how much money he's going to make next year. I think you re-sign him as a backup and get a guy in the draft. And it does not have to be similar to Cam Newton at all. You may want to get a guy who's going to stay in the pocket and throw some darts like Mac Jones or a mobile quarterback like Justin Fields if he's still on the board. I'm just so excited to see the future of this Pats offense, and it all starts at the QB position.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Patriots, according to what we've learned prior to the Super Bowl, will enter the offseason with one of the largest cap spaces in the National Football League, which is something that we're not very used to as Patriots fans, considering of the multitude of talent that we had on the offense and defensive side of the ball. So, I mean, really, it's going to be tough to see because you got people like Joe Thuney, J.C. Jackson, and James White, who all are looking for contracts, but by the looks of it, I think you only keep Thuney, really, and J.C. Jackson. Those are 2 guys you need to keep. James White, he's done his share, but, I mean, we've seen his production in the offense go down as they've really started leaning towards Damian Harris. So, I mean...
He's pretty non-existent, honestly.
To be honest, he definitely deserves a lot more playing time on the field for what he brings to the table as a receiving back. So, I mean... It's very tough for me, but I really hope the Patriots move towards the draft because I have no belief in Cam Newton right now. I mean, we'll see if they draw something up for him that works well and actually wins games, but I don't know.
Yeah.
The future is bleak as of right now.
We're very critical of the Patriots, Bill Belichick too, and his system. We're diehards. We love the team. Give Belichick a little bit of credit though. It's his first time, with a new quarterback, and since 2008 really, or if you want to count 2016 when Brady was out the first 4 games. But
yeah,
Cam Newton, who signed in July, no training camp really, no preseason at all, and I think signed in June actually, and he still won 7 games with them. It wasn't too bad. They still found a way to win games, which is really critical.
Mm-hmm.
On paper, this team looks like a 4-12 team. If we're going to be honest,
yeah, to be honest,
maybe a 3-13 squad, but they won 7 games with Cam, and at the level that he played at, still able to win 7 games against some solid teams. We saw him beat the Cardinals at home. We saw him beat the Ravens at home. 2 pretty solid teams, one of them being a playoff team. We saw them absolutely pound the Los Angeles Chargers. These guys can still find ways to win games. And I think if we just polish up the offense a little bit, I think we can see the Pats back in the postseason next year. They still have tremendous coach with Bill Belichick. They can 7-9. If you go 9-7 with 7 seasons in the playoffs, you have a chance to make it. If they can win 2 more games, which they had chances to the whole year. They had really close games against Seattle on the road, Buffalo on the road,
Kansas City.
If they had Cam, as funny as it sounds because we're on Cam this whole episode segment, but if they had Cam in the game, they might win. They held Mahomes to 6 points at the half.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, what people love to shower him with is he's the former MVP, NFC champion.
Yeah.
And I mean,
but
it's
as
just
he was telling us the other week, he's been hearing that the last 5-6 years.
Yeah. And the thing is like we ever since that season where the Panthers went 15-1 and lost to the Super Bowl to the Denver Broncos, they just haven't really been the same, really. I mean, even with the addition of Christian McCaffrey, we saw a season where Cam Newton did very well. But regardless, I mean, the production has just dropped. His production is just not what it used to be. And it's almost like we're watching a shadow of his former self. So who knows? Maybe we'll see a rebirth with Cam Newton, or maybe we'll see him leaving the team and potentially being a quarterback somewhere else. Who knows? A lot of time to really divvy this out. Of course, I believe free agency starts the 13th or 14th this year.
Yeah, it's always the second week of March. It's
Yeah.
always around there because that's when the new league year begins. I'm excited to see what happens. A lot of free agents on the move. Hopefully the Pats can make a run for Allen Robinson, for example.
That would be amazing.
I doubt he'd come to New England. Maybe he would if he's a fan of winning rings. But
yeah, I mean, potentially, who wouldn't want to come here? I mean, Matt Stafford and Deshaun Watson both are like, no, I don't want to go to New England, which is like beyond me. It's like, okay.
But dude, the Pats had what was I gonna say? They have a good amount of money too in cap, don't they? So
yeah, I believe they're like 20 million cap right now, or 23, 25 million.
And that what's his name is A-Rob's gonna want a lot of money. So
yeah, so we'll see if the Patriots are willing to pay some guy. But obviously here on Chet and Duffy, us being big Patriots fans, we will have a lot of off-season coverage, not just with the Patriots, but around the league. So once that begins, we will definitely dive a lot into analysis of what the league is doing with their off-season moves. So when we get back, we're going to talk about the Boston Celtics, who fell last night to the Dallas Mavericks. The score was 108-105. And then we're going to get into some NBA midseason talk, because we're going to talk about what we think our top 5 teams are. And we're going to get into what All-Stars we think were snubbed going into this All-Star break. So when we get back, Chet and Duffy will discuss the NBA. All right, welcome back to Unapologetic with Chet and Duffy here on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. Jumping into some NBA talk here. Boston Celtics fell to 15-16 last night as they were solemnly defeated by a last-minute three-pointer. The final score to the Dallas Mavericks was 110-107. Correction on that score chart. This was a team that came into the season looking very promising with a good streak of wins, but suddenly once we hit close to mid-season, that win column started to trickle down a little bit more, and we started to see an addition of losses for the Celtics. So a lot of big question marks.
The addition of losses, that was a good way to put it. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games. They've been borderline unwatchable at times, losing a lot of games that they should have won. I've been betting on NBA basketball like pretty much every night, I'm going to be honest. And a trend I see is the Celtics are always favored to win. Like they were like -5 against the Mavs last night, and I was this close to betting Mavs money line. I'm like, dude, I don't think the Celtics can win this game at all. And lo and behold, the man on the screen, Luka Doncic, step back, game-winning 3. I mean, it was bad. It's a heartbreaking way to lose a game. But these guys are 15-16. They're under 500. Brad Stevens. A lot of people have been saying he's on the hot seat this year, and
I think for sure
he honestly is, because this is a team that's had one of the best young cores in the league the last 4 or 5 years. You guys were projected to come out of the East, back in 2018, 2019. They're the favorites for the East for years to come, honestly, at one point. It's funny looking back at those days now. It really is. Not saying they can't turn it around, but the moment now you have two young all-stars in Brown and Tatum, and you're under 500 with this team. It's kind of inexcusable, because these are a lot of games they should win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, definitely you could point the finger and blame people like Al Horford or Terry Rozier, both leaving the team and going to new teams and all that. And honestly, that definitely is a big part of it, because I mean, you look at that Celtics bench, you don't really have a lot of depth there, and you're just expecting three guys coming from Tatum, Walker, and Brown to all do amazing every single game. And I mean, last night they did all they could. I mean, Jaylen Brown, 29 points, Kemba Walker, 21, and Jason Tatum, 28. Very big for them. But then, of course,
you inconsistent too, as we know. Sorry to cut you off. Check. Continue.
No, totally fine. But then you look at the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, Doncic, 31 points. And then off the bench, that's where they got a majority of their points from. Tim Hardaway Jr., he managed to score 14 last night. And then, of course, at 22 points, Jalen Brunson coming off the bench for a few minutes there to really he played 30 minutes of the game.
30 minutes.
But regardless, and then you look at the Celtics bench, a scale of 8 points, 4 points, and 7 points. And then you're talking 8 points from Thompson, 28 from Tatum, Theus at 2, Walker at 21, and then Jaylen Brown at 29. And then you look at what the Mavericks had on their bench. They got 14, 10, 5, and 22. That adds up to be huge. And now you're looking at the Celtics, who last week when we were talking about them were in 4th place. They now are looking at the 6th seed and potentially looking to be out of playoff contention in the next few weeks if they keep this trend up. The solution? Yeah. I don't have one. Because honestly, it feels to me this team is doomed. To me, I just don't see that their depth really adding a lot to what their star core has to offer. That's just my take on it. I just don't know how this team's going to elevate. If it's going to take some hard talking to, something said in the locker room to really fire people up. But at the end of the day, this league has showed if you don't have a strong core and depth, you're not winning games, especially with teams like the Brooklyn Nets, who have, endless amounts of talent. The Los Angeles Lakers.
Beat the Celtics by like 30 points prior to acquiring James Harden.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, and I mean, looking at the schedule, they lose to the Pelicans the week before. And the Atlanta Hawks.
They were up 25 points that game. 25 points that game. They blow that lead. As we were both saying, so many of these games they should have won. They should have beat the Hawks at home. They beat them the next game afterwards. They should have won that game. They're playing them again tonight, though, by the way. They should have beat the Pelicans after being up 24 points. They should have beat the Washington Wizards, a team that was last in the conference when they played them, sitting at like 7-14 or something like that. So many winnable games. But the Celtics, they have not had depth these last few games, as you were saying, with guys like Semi Ojeleye playing pretty poorly. Freaking Peyton Pritchard only 7 points last night. Carson Edwards out. Jeff Teague has been playing really poor this year too. Tristan Thompson inconsistent on the boards. Kemba Walker, arguably the most inconsistent player on the team this year. You can't really trust him to get 17, 18 like you could last year in games.
Yeah.
He's got single-digit points in a lot of games this year, which has been really uncharacteristic of Kemba Walker. But at the end of the day, I think in the NBA, talent wins, as I was saying last week. And when you have Brown and Tatum on the team, I think they'll make the playoffs for sure. We've seen these guys in the playoffs each of the last 6 seasons, I think. Yeah, 6 seasons.
Yeah.
And the Eastern Conference is kind of weak this year. Let's not lie about it. And they're 15, 16, but they're still 6 in the conference somehow, which is crazy. And this year too, the 9th and 10th seeds, by the way, they have a little play-in game for that 8th seed, I believe, or it's something like that. I don't remember what it is, but it's something super like that. But I think they have a lot of time to turn around. I think that you're going to see guys like Aaron Nesmith elevate throughout the year for the Celtics. The rookie out of I think it's Indiana. I'm not completely sure. I should be more woke on that stat, but Vanderbilt, my bad, Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
I think we're going to see these guys, get back. And then we're going to see Tim get back to full strength. He's had some issues after coming back from COVID. It's really where the Celtics started to lose their stride, was when he was out for a couple weeks with the virus. But I think they're going to pick things back up together. I think they're going to, maybe go on a hot streak here and there. But if they can win tonight and get back up to 500, that would be huge. And they have some tough games after that against the Pacers, against the Wizards, who already lost a couple weeks ago, against the Clippers, who are second in the Western Conference. A lot of tough games. And tonight, I think, as early as it is in the season, I think tonight is a must-win.
It definitely is. And, I mean, looking at the scoreboard right now, the Celtics are down to the Hawks 13-11 right now with 8:07 left in the first. So looking at where they are right now, this is definitely a good position for them to figure something out, because we're heading into the All-Star break. And this is perfect time for them to really meditate on what they're doing right and wrong and really change their game plan, because there just is something in the water there that is just preventing them from winning games. And we'll see what can turn the tide for this team going into mid-season at this point. But now, looking at power rankings, Chet and Duffy tonight will each present their top 5 picks. So starting at number 5, Duffy, why don't you lead us off with your number 5 pick?
My number 5 pick for the NBA power rankings, I'm going to have to say, currently at the moment, I'm going to have to go with the Los Angeles Clippers. This is a pretty solid team. Paul George really having a comeback year this year after playing poorly in the bubble last season to end the year off. Kawhi Leonard having a nice year, obviously, as he always does. This team currently sits second in the Western Conference. They're not as deep as they were last year, especially losing a guy like Marcus Morris on the team and Montrezl Harrell to the Lakers, actually. I think the Clippers second in the conference right now. I think they're on a really good run, really good tear right now. They're currently 6-4 in their last 10 games. They have a lot of depth too. They're a team that's going to contend to reach the Western Conference Finals. I don't think they're going to reach the finals. That's why they're saying number 5 for me. Mm-hmm. I think they're a really talented team. They have some star power. I'm excited to see what they can do the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you here, Duffy. I mean, looking at what the LA Clippers have to offer, they sit very comfortably at the number 5 spot for me. Kawhi Leonard this season, 27.1 points per game. Paul George, 24.6. And Marcus Morris, another former Celtic.
PG, baby. Let's go. That's my boy, PG. I hate him getting too much hate from these players around the league. Pardon my French.
And then Marcus Morris at 13 points a game. And looking at where they rank in terms of points per game throughout the league, they rank at 4th place with 115 points a game. And field goal attempts, I mean, I like the ratio there at 48%. That's number 3 in the league in terms of making threes. So, I mean, looking at what this team has to offer, they've got it all. They've got what it takes to make a deep playoff push. Like you said, sitting comfortably in that 2nd seed right now in the West. And they've really turned around from what they used to be with players like Chris Paul being there. And I mean, it's a totally different squad right there. So, I mean, I think they sit comfortably right there at the number 5 seed for me. Now to move into the 4th seed for me in the power rankings.
Who you got, Chet?
This is a tough one, my boy. This was a tough one to think about, but I'm probably going to have to go with the Phoenix Suns on this one.
Really?
I think Phoenix is definitely...
Phoenix at 4.
Yeah.
I think personally, I don't got in my top 5, but let me hear you out. Let me hear it.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at what they've got. I mean, Chris Paul definitely has shown a rebirth in his career a little bit too, being on a much better team. I mean, he has been on good teams like we saw with the Houston Rockets last season. And he just is a good complement to Devin Booker. Devin Booker is easily one of the top players in the league this year with 24.7 points. What's that?
Snub. We'll get to that in a sec.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that in a sec. But you look at least 6 players on this team, from DeAndre Ayton at 13.9 points a game, Mikal Bridges at 13.9, and then the last 3 guys are both averaging around 10 points a game. We're looking at themselves in the rankings. The Phoenix Suns rank 15th at 113, which isn't horrible. That's very much average in the middle of the pack. But But right now, you're looking at a team that's sitting comfortably at 19-10, and well, actually, it's now 20-10.
20-10, actually. I saw that stat today that Devin Booker was leading a 20-10 team, shooting 50% from the field, and no also, but CP3 made it too.
Yeah,
so.
They rest at the 4th seed right now in the West, but they've won some crucial games but they did lose a crucial game to the Brooklyn Nets. We talked about that, but ever since then, 3-game win streak, 132-114 over the Pelicans, the Grizzlies 128-97, the Trailblazers 132-100. Granted, we're talking teams that aren't really in the major contention in the NBA, but you're talking about a team that rebounds from a tough loss in a game in which they led tremendously by at least 30 points going into half, I would say, when I was watching that game.
21 at half. They were up 20 for the majority of the first half, too.
But this team has shown they can put up points and stay in a game.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And actually, it's official now. Devin Booker has replaced Anthony Davis in the All-Star game. I knew it was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen today, but it did happen about an hour ago. So AD is injured. And speaking of AD and being injured, that's why I have the Los Angeles Lakers at number 4
Ooh.
power rankings, and here's why. They've lost 3 games in a row. They've lost me some money, admittedly. I'm not going to lie. They have not put to my betting account. But, at full strength, does this team make the finals? I think so. With LeBron James and AD, I think they make the finals. But right now, they've lost 3 games in a row. They've not been pretty games. They lost to the Nets by, pretty sizable margin. I was watching that game, and I actually had, I actually thought that the Lakers were going to win that game. I had the money line. They lost to the Heat in that finals rematch where they did not play good at all. They only lost by 2, but watching that game, it was more than a 2-point game for the majority of the second half. It did not feel like a 2-point game at all for most of the game. But with LeBron James and leading these troops, leading these young guns, I think they're going to make the playoffs. Obviously, they're still in the top 5 for a reason. But at the moment, are they as good as other Western Conference teams? I don't think so. Such as, a different team I'll talk about in a sec.
Yeah, so why don't you lead us off with that right there?
Number 3, actually, no, I have them at number 2, but number 3, I have the Sixers in my standings. I got the Sixers number 3 because I think they're a really talented team right now. They're first in the East. Joel Embiid playing an MVP this year, MVP caliber level. Tobias Harris, another all-star snub we can talk about in a sec. But yeah, they deserve some respect. This is not the same Philly team that we've seen in recent years. My opinions have really changed since we've had Mike on the show. I'm not gonna lie, but this team has been efficient. They've been winning games. They've been scoring a lot of points. And Ben Simmons, also an all-star too. Not going to discredit him. This team has 3 all-star caliber players, and I think they pose the biggest threat to the Nets in the East right now.
All right, so some good points right there. But for me, my number 3, I'm going to have to disagree with you on your last one with putting the Lakers this low. I'm putting the Lakers at number 3. I mean, this
one spot.
What's that? I know, but I'm just saying. I think they deserve at least 3.
I think
for a good.
Will be number 1.
No, I don't think they'll be number 1, but they could be by the end of the season. But I mean, LeBron James at 25.8 points per game. Anthony Davis 22.5. Dennis Schroeder at 14.2.
You were right at first. Schroeder. You were right at first.
Wow, get me with these pronunciations.
My brother used to abuse him in 2K. He used to, because Schroeder.
Oh, really?
Got that quick speed. My brother used to love Dennis Schroeder in 2K. It was funny. But
the Lakers currently rank 18th in the league at 112. So obviously Anthony Davis, that's going to be tough for them without having him down the stretch for right now, considering his injury. But I mean, with this team, they've just got what it takes. They won the NBA Finals last year. They are the top dogs right now, and I think, based on the talent that they have on that team, I think they deserve this number 3 spot, especially with a lot of the competition going on from other teams, not just in their conference, but from around the NBA. I think we'll eventually probably see this team creep its way up to the number 1 spot, but who knows?
Maybe.
At some point, maybe. But that's my number 3 spot. I'm keeping the Lakers right there.
I'm assuming we both have the same number 2, and they reside in the the West. the western part, the Mountain Time Zone. Do you have him at number 2? Do you have the
I
Rock?
do.
Do
I
you have
do
him at number
not.
1? Do you have the Rocky Utah Jazz at number 1?
No, I'm kidding. No, I also have the Utah Jazz at number 2.
They've been great this year.
They really have.
They've been winning games by a ton of points. I would put them number 1 any other season, honestly,
Mhm.
but they're a great team. Don Mitchell's been great this year. He's an all-star, no doubt. Rudy Gobert has been great too. I think they're both all-stars, correct? Yep,
Yeah.
both all-star reserves. I think D. Mitch deserves some more credit for the way
Yeah,
he's
Donovan Mitchell has been
groups,
filthy
because he's
this
been one of
year.
those guys the last few years people have
I
not
have to
been really
agree.
yeah. You're lagging a little bit, but we're both on the same page, and we both have the Nets number 1. I'm going to assume the Nets number
Yeah.
1.
Brooklyn
That
Nets.
star power is crazy.
Yeah, and obviously you don't have your 2 top dogs, but even with James Harden being there, he's just proven that he's a leader for this team, and we saw that a couple weeks ago with that huge.
Yeah.
What's that?
That Suns game, is that what you're going to say?
Say that one more time. Sorry.
That Suns game, lean them back from 20.
Yeah, of course. We'll lean back on the Suns, but then we see them beat the LA Lakers, the Clippers, and the Kings. I mean, you take one tough team down, and then you take 2 more down. This is a team that has just had a lot of doubts over its head because of the character issue. But once again, talent prevails with this team, and that's why they take the number 1 spot for me.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And like you were saying, with a couple of crucial wins, 5-0 on their Western, road trip, which is huge. They beat 5 pretty solid teams, especially the Lakers. That was possibly a finals preview.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't live up to the hype because they weren't both at full strength. Kyrie Irving, saying we're going to see him again later on the road, which I think we all will. That's going to be one of the best finals matchups we've seen. I'm excited, very excited for another Lakers Nets matchup and possibly one in the NBA Finals. But Chet, before we finish, give me your biggest All-Star snub. March 7th I believe in Atlanta this year, we have Team Durant versus Team LeBron. And I'm very excited for this matchup. Two very talented teams. I don't even know when the draft is really, but who is the biggest All-Star snub this year?
For me, looking at the list, give me 1 second.
Including Booker too, because he actually technically didn't make the team.
Yeah, I mean Devin Booker is what I was going to go with, but for me, I'm going to have to go with Chris Middleton from the Milwaukee Bucks. I think Chris Middleton. What's that?
I like that pick a lot.
Yeah, I mean, because you just look at what he's done this year. I mean, his field goal percentage, highest in his career so far by 1 percentile at 49.8%, and then scoring 20.3 points a game. That's a huge upside for him. We're seeing Chris Middleton probably playing some of the best basketball in his career, especially with the Milwaukee Bucks. And it just disappoints me that the NBA didn't tip the cap to him and give him a spot.
Yeah, there's a lot of talented guys from the East this year. I'm choosing one from the East as well. And one from my second favorite team, the Indiana Pacers. I'm going with Domantas Sabonis, the big man out of Indiana, 21.5 points per game, 11.5 rebounds per game he's averaging this year, along with nearly 6 assists. He made the All-Star game last year, actually, averaging 19, 12, and 5. Better stats all around this year, honestly. And I think that he should have made the All-Star game. The Pacers are currently 4th in the Eastern Conference. He's having a better year than last year. He's been helping, get a lot of wins. And, he's been a huge part to that team. And I think that he should have made the All-Star game over a guy like Nick Vucevic, who, he's been on a great year. So I'm not gonna try to discredit him at all.
Yeah.
But the Magic are saying 13th in the East. I think he should have made over Ben Simmons too. Ben Simmons is a guy. Ben Simmons is the guy I think Tobias Harris could have made over Ben Simmons too. I don't even think Ben Simmons is arguably the 3rd best player on his team.
Yeah.
It's arguable.
It's arguable, but it's not far-fetched in my opinion.
On the screen there. Man, I really think Sabonis got snubbed. I think he was a huge snub. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks. We'll probably give you some coverage on the All-Star game and our thoughts on it after it has concluded. But as of right now, this concludes Unapologetic with Chet and Duffy. We'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Check out our podcast and check out our live sports coverage of men's and girls ice hockey for high school games. We stream them every week. We're going to have a break in between, but come spring, football will be upon us for high school, and that's going to be some good coverage. I will be covering games there. And as of right now, that does it for us. So this is Chet and Duffy signing off from Unapologetic on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. Have a great night and a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll
Go
see
Pats.
you guys next Wednesday. Save time and go Pats.